Buenas tardes, hello. Hello everybody, good afternoon, boa tarde. I am Andrea Coronato. I'm researcher of CADIC CONICET at Ushuaia in Argentina. I am also one of the IAG vice presidents and the Latin American co-opter of IAG. IAG is the International Association of Geomorphologists, as you may know. Together with my colleague from Universidade Federal de Bahia in Brazil, Gerais Alves, we are in charge to coordinate this fourth IAG webinar to celebrate the 2024 International Week of Geomorphology for this part of the world, for our Central and South American territories. This is an official activity of IAG, so the presentations and some lectures must be in English. But anyway, we also use Spanish and Portuguese, our local languages, for some lectures, for questions, for comments. So please feel free to participate in any of the three languages. All of them are accepted. Buenas tardes a todos, ahora en español por las dudas. Soy Andrea Coronato, soy investigadora de CONICET en el CADIC, en Ushuaia, y uno de los vicepresidentes de la Asociación Internacional de Geomorfólogos, más conocida como IAG o IAG, y además soy representante para Latinoamérica de esta asociación. Y hoy, junto con Gerais Alves, mi compañera de la Universidad Federal de Salvador de Bahía y secretaria de la Unión de Geomorfología de Brasil, estamos encargadas de organizar y de llevar adelante este cuarto webinar para celebrar la Semana Internacional de la Geomorfología del año 2024. Esta es la cuarta oportunidad en que nos reunimos en esta primera semana de marzo para realizar esta actividad. Les decía que como es una actividad oficial de IAG, el idioma oficial es el inglés. Por eso abrimos la reunión hablando en inglés. Pero de todos modos podemos hablar en español, en portugués, y les pedimos a todos que por favor se sientan libres de hacer preguntas, comentarios en cualquiera de los tres idiomas, porque todos son aceptados. Grace?
Boa tarde. Boa tarde a todas e todos. Eu sou a Grace Alves, sou professora na Universidade Federal da Bahia, sou secretária da União de Geomorfologia Brasileira e estou aqui junto com a Andrea Coronato, pesquisadora do CADIC CONICET em Ushuaia, Argentina, também vice-presidente e representante da América Latina no IAG. Nós estamos encarregadas de dar boas-vindas a todos e todas que estão aqui assistindo o quarto webinar para celebrar a Semana Internacional de Geomorfologia. Por esta ser uma atividade do IAG, né, da Associação Internacional de Geomorfologia, nós utilizaremos o inglês em algumas apresentações. Também vamos comentar e perguntar e discutir em espanhol e português, que são as nossas línguas locais. Então, por favor, se sintam à vontade de fazer perguntas em português, em espanhol, em inglês, a que for mais conveniente, que nós iremos repassar para os jovens profissionais de geomorfologia que estão apresentando hoje, para que a gente tenha aí uma rica tarde. Andrea.
6 young geomorphologists from Costa Rica, Brazil, Chile, and Argentina, some of them living abroad or working abroad, are the protagonists of this webinar, in which they will share their results coming from postdoctoral studies or coming from their participation in research projects. We want to deeply thank to all of them. 6 geomorfólogos de Costa Rica, de Brasil, de Chile y de Argentina son los protagonistas del webinar de 2024 y ellos van a compartir con nosotros los resultados de sus estudios doctorales, postdoctorales o de resultados de los proyectos de investigación en los que están o estuvieron involucrados. Queremos agradecer profundamente. We want to deeply thanks to Raquel Granados Aguilar from Costa Rica, but living in the United States. Joao Paulo Soares de Cortés and Renata Jordán Henríquez de Brasil. A Ignacio Ibarra Cofré de Chile, aunque viviendo en el Reino Unido y trabajando en Reino Unido. Y también a Mariana Correas González y a Damián Groch, ambos de Argentina. A todos les agradecemos ser parte de esta actividad. We are very thankful to all of them to accept to be part of this activity.
Teremos, então, 6 profissionais em geomorfologia dos países Costa Rica, Brasil, Chile e Argentina, alguns destes vivendo e trabalhando fora da América Latina, que vão compartilhar com a gente os resultados de suas pesquisas. Gostaríamos de agradecer, então, a Raquel Granados Aguilar, da Costa Rica, João Paulo Soares de Cortés e Renata Jordán Henríquez, do Brasil, Ignacio Barra Cofré, do Chile, Mariana Correas Gonzalez e Damián Groch, da Argentina, por terem aceitado esse convite para fazer a apresentação de seus trabalhos hoje aqui. Muito obrigada.
We hope the dissemination of the results of their work will motivate other young researchers, students, and professionals to discover the remaining questions about landforms and processes of the Earth's surface, and their interaction with the atmosphere, lithosphere, and biosphere, as well as with the society and its infrastructure. Also, we hope to reach the IAG intention to promote this type of meetings, useful to know each other's, and to strengthen geomorphology in our continent. Esperamos que la difusión de los trabajos de nuestros disertantes sea una fuerte motivación para otros jóvenes estudiantes, investigadores, jóvenes profesionales, para descubrir los interrogantes que aún se nos presentan cuando estudiamos o cuando nos plantamos frente a geoformas y procesos que modelan o que han modelado la superficie de nuestro planeta. Cuando nos interrogamos acerca de sus interacciones con la atmósfera, con la litosfera, con la biosfera y con la sociedad que sobre ellos habita y sobre la que implanta su infraestructura. Asimismo, también es intención de la IAG que estos encuentros sirvan para reunirnos anualmente, para conocernos, para fortalecer el desarrollo de nuestra disciplina en nuestro continente americano.
Esperamos que a divulgação dos resultados dessas pesquisas possam servir como motivação para jovens pesquisadoras e pesquisadores, estudantes e profissionais para buscar as questões associadas às geoformas e aos processos que têm modelado a superfície de nosso planeta, assim como suas interações com a atmosfera, litosfera, biosfera, com a sociedade e o espaço produzido. Assim, esperamos que essa proposta do IAG possa acontecer anualmente para que possamos conhecer e fortalecer o desenvolvimento da geomorfologia em nosso continente.
Okay, no more words. It's time to start with our first presentation, ¿no? Ya es momento de presentar a nuestra primera disertante.
Sem mais palavras, a gente passa então para as apresentações. Por favor, André. Renata will present for us about landscapes, geoarchaeology, and climate change. Marajó Island, Brazilian Amazon. So, hello, Renata. Can you turn on your mic? Yeah, thank you.
Okay. And hello, everyone. Thank you for the invite. So let me introduce myself, like Grace do. I'm Renata Jordán Henríquez. I have 32 years old, and I'm graduating geography at the Federal University of Minas Gerais, Brazil, with master's degree in environment analysis, and conclude my PhD in 2022 in physical geography at the same university, UFMG, Brazil. So in this International Association of Geomorphologists webinar, I'll present the main results of my PIG entitled, like you can see, Landscapes, Geoarchaeology and Climate Change, Marajó Island, Brazilian Amazon. Em português, my language called Geoambientes, Geoarqueologia e Mudanças Climáticas, Ilha de Marajó, Amazônia Brasileira. Marajó Island is a great natural environment complex archipelago located in the mouth of the draining basin of Amazon River, with more than 30 million kilometers of square area. And it's based by the Atlantic Ocean near the equator line. The study here was part of a grand research project about the coastal areas of Brazil in the South America. As part of results referring to Marajó Bay in the north of the country, we published the works entitled Soils and Landscapes of Marajó Island, Brazilian Amazon, Holocene Evolution, Geoarchaeology and Climatic Vulnerability, and another paper, Impacts of Anthropocene Sea Level Rise on People, Environments and Archaeological Sites in Marajó Island, Brazilian Amazon. You can follow the works through the links below after the presentation. So, the Marajó Island has two main geomorphological domains: the lowlands at the east, here, and the uplands at the west, there. You can see a green line traced corresponding to letters A and B. It's corresponding to the topographic surface of the region, as you can see in the image below. So you can see the lowlands here, the most high elevation here, the uplands, and here the lowlands at the east, the main environment here, correspond to grassy open plains. Hi. In the west, in this zone, at the left side, we have areas of dense forests, such as the typical domain of the Amazon dense vegetation. In the east, in the right side, we have extensive grassy open plains with low vegetation, like gramíneas, and zones with high salinization in the interior of the island, near the central lake, as you can see in the center of the image. As a result of my PIG, we analyzed the prediction scenarios of sea level rise in the region, estimating until 6 elevation of the ocean waters. The result is permanent flooding of almost the lowlands landscapes domain, as you can observe through the blue represent column in the figure below. Here we have scenarios of until 2 meters of elevation. You can see flooding of some areas, mainly of this open grassy plains about the lowlands of Marajó Island. We have scenarios of 3 meters elevation. You can see more high floating intrusion of the waters of Atlantic Ocean there, and 6 meters, it's a exacerbated model prediction, but it's important to see this because we can see the thick of the Arari Lake, and another river here, Paraucari, is important mass of water with thick, more than 30 meters, someone. And these saline areas that we can estimate ancient flooding, this intrusion in the waters by the Atlantic Ocean that causes also this salinization and association with the evapotranspirating in the region. It's an equatorial region. It's very tropical and warming, so the rain, it's a lot. So modeling this geo-environment and conciliate with the tectonic points of view that can structure this land, this uplands on high and the lowlands at the east. It's a grand graben in the region corresponding to the separate of the South America plate and the Africa, the ribs. So the problem here about this climatic scenario, sea level rise, the region, it's not so much about the natural environment conditions impact, but most over in the people who lives there. So attention, the natural environment has this configuration, this aspect is there through among the Holocene. But the people who lives there is the more impacted, more than natural event. So in this context, here I present the main goals of the sustainability development applicable in the region promoted by the United Nations. I pointed here the most important goals that comprises the region. The focus here is about the main vulnerable population who lives there. The Marajó Island represents an important archaeological site with indigenous black earth, in Portuguese, terra preta de índio, that contains ceramic and sambaquis. And very people who lives there is very common, is direct descent of ancient indigenous population of the North Brazil. As you can see in the red areas of the map, like here, Cachoeira do Arari, Anajás, cities, grand cities there, Souri, Moaná, Salvaterra, also Breves, it's represented the people affected according to the climatic conditions of change in that prediction scenarios of sea level rise to Marajó Island for the next centuries. The main problem is about the intrusion of saline waters of the Atlantic Ocean that compromise the water quality for animal and human consumption. So the people who lives there with this water, this tendency of sea level rise in the region, pass by almost risks and impacted along the time for the next centuries. So perturbing on fishing, habitation, permanent floating, population who need to migrate to highlands or to the continents. Remember, Marajó Island, it's a big archipelago. And the country is like Belém, Pará. I don't know if you listened before, but the problem is about the people who's there now. They need to migrate to the continents. It's some like this social environment impact. And we walked at the east of the Marajó Island in December 2018 and analyzed the most diverse set of soils encountered in that region, the local. The soils are from the most flooded, typical of the mangrove zones and grand fluvial areas, represented by the soils, sulfites and sodic hydrokinks, coiled glacials or glacials in the Portuguese classification on the US classification soil. So as example, you can, of this kind of soils, you can see represented in P4, here P6, there, P11, P12, and P14 are flood, are example of flooded soils. And to the most well-drained and better structured soils are the shanty and ox soils, called latosol or plintosol, represented by the P1 here, P7, P13, P17, and P19. Some sandy areas also occurred and form the spodosols or arenasols. You can see in the P2 here, or P5 there. In the P8, you can observe an interesting situation represented by a vertical section followed by the a superior organical A horizon over a sandy in which buried a paleo-mangrove glacial. It means occur the transition of mangrove. You can hear me yet? Okay. So,
Yes.
okay. It means occur the transition of a mangrove vegetation here to most grassy and salinity plains. Among salinity plains through the Holocene fluvial dynamics. If you compare it, the P8 with the P2 here, here, a spodosol, the situation is a little different because it's corresponding to an ancient fluvial sandy zone that progressive passed by pedogenesis in situ process over the sand over the years. So these soils and landscape diversity represent the results of the interaction dynamics of the water of Marajó Bay by the interaction between the Amazon River basin and the Atlantic Ocean waters. As an example of this dynamic interaction of different kinds of water's properties, remind of the fresh waters of Amazon River and the saline waters of the Atlantic Ocean. So the example of this dynamic interaction of different kind of water properties, you can see in the P1 in this image, an example of transgress and regression of waters of the Marajó Bay that molding this sequence of geological horizons intervalled by the most well-drained phases and most flooded moments during the Holocene. While P2, here in the image, is a significant example of mangrove soil substrate, whose the sea level rise has exposed and sculpted a little glacial fall in the east of Marajó Island. It's an interesting scenario. Here, we have the biome of mangrove, typical of this image here. So it's difficult to see glacials because it's common to stay underwater. So there, with this intensive erosion promoted by the waters in the Marajó Bay, we can observe this fall sculpted there. And most of the rhizophorus and plants in the areas tombs. It's a sign of this aggressive and progressive erosion in the area. So the P3 in turn, see this tree image, is the example of landscape areas with the most altitude at the east of the island, which derives in thick, well-drained soils and regards the major indigenous black earth culture of ancient occupation. So the chemical and physical attributes of the soils is clear evidence of these Holocene dynamic waters and its consequence over the landscape evolution in the region. As conclusion, I present this schematic diagram pointed the main frontiers between the anthropic intervention, the scale of the climate change discussions, and the global natural dynamics that could depend or not of our existence on Earth. So, in this great scale, this part, the anthropic factors, is how we intervene directly on the natural environment, the natural Earth. So, as example, agriculture, livestock, urbanization, water management, savage sanitization. So, in that side, we have the climate change discussions. It's what's in the hotspots today. It's like the sea level projections, this storm intensification, the mangrove disturbance, the ocean water warming, and the El Nino intensification. So we also have the natural dynamics. All is there, but it could depend or not of us, like the annual plains inundation. The intertropical convergence zone is a typical climatical situation that occurs in the near of the equator line. The river flow dynamic, the tide oscillations, and the only itself El Nino and La Nina, like a natural dynamic, but could be intensified by the climate change situation that could be inputted by the anthropic factors or not. As a purpose for managers and government actors, I present a listing of the main human impacts and natural environment conditions under the climate change global discussions. So, like human impacts, we have population migration across the world. It depends on the scale of case, losses of archaeological sites and its artifacts, hunger by disturbance in fishing, agriculture, and livestock. Remember, this is a case more specific to Marajó Bay. So it's included in the Sustainable Development Goals and its purposes. And until the human impacts, the increase in social inequality and poverty. So in terms of environment impacts, we have permanent inundation, mangrove disturbance, coastline erosions, soil and Indian black earth carbon stock, and loss of the vegetation biodiversity. The reason to present this diagram structure is to better understand the natural environment dynamics and then the dimension of our impact in the earth, on the earth, and suggest this way to implement actions that benefit the quality life of population who lives in that region. To understand the natural environment, we need first to measure, quantify, register the water dynamics to planning and implementing tools to better adapt the civilization in front until of the most pessimistic climate change scenarios for the next centuries. Not knowing the natural environment, we cannot act appropriately in front of the prediction models, especially about the sea level rise. Because it's a coastal area, so it's the most vulnerable in these conditions of sea level rise in a long-term scale of understanding. So to conclude this diagram structure, we have the sequence about information, planning, implementation, and monitoring evaluation. Like monitoring evaluation of the area, we have the Human Development Index. So there is concentrated the most poor in cities in Brazil. So the AGI is very little in the region. There are people who depend on fishing, as an example. So that's the main problem about this intrusion of saline waters in the region. And in this monitoring evolution, we have quantified affected by flooding, or how many people who are affected by this flooding, and what we can do about these people. Where he need to migrating to the continent, he still permanent in the region, how we can help these people. And the coastal morphology and dynamic trends. So there is a core erosion in the margins. What is the situation of the Mediterranean? The maintenance of the tide gauge instruments. We have to need resources to install instruments to measure, especially the sea level rise in terms of tide and these natural dynamics. Carbon stock and gas emission, We have an area with important livestock, with buffaloes in the area. So it's always a way of life of the people. Many people depends of this kind of job. And the social economic balance. So us as managers, we need to understand first this, how is the people in that region. So the implementation, we talking about deforestation control, tide guards installation, in association with research for the region, government assistance to that communities. So we're talking about different cities, and someone who lives in Souri, a municipal there, is different than someone who lives in Breves, because the distance in this municipal is also a little grand. So if these people came to the continent, like Belém do Pará, or Macapá, Amapá, or Manaus, Amazon, it's another city. So how can this another cities will receive these people if he receives? We can to remember this population, indigenous people. There is a lot of different kinds of cultures and specifics. So it's not so about leaves someone to follow another place to order. So also about the implementation, we have environment human scientific research as example of this kind of research and project to bring knowledge about that region. The erosive containment barriers on the coastline is one ways to mitigate, depends of the scale. So the communication channel, I presented this in this IAG webinar, but I don't know if someone in that Marajó Island now is knowing about this presentation, or if some like in us to promote the job, like example. But it's in ways to bring in terms of sustainable development goals, I try to connect this. And the preservation of archaeological sites, like the indigenous Black Earth. So we also have the planning. So in terms of environment and human data survey, categorization of most vulnerable areas, such I present in the slide before, about how many people could be impacted moreover the sea level rise, formulation of public policies, scientific research funding, to funding another research, moreover in the region or here, I don't know. International support is important, extrapolate the barrier of a country. Marajó, Brazil is a big country, so to better implementing these goals, we need also the contribute of another countries here and facility communication. So we here in academy can formulate diverse practices, plannings, implementations, and actions, but we also need to find ways to communicate direct with that people. That people is feeling that some changing in the climate change, or is also in our research is, oh my God, the sea level rise there. So we form this sea level rise models, and for the people in the region, maybe can be not happening. Maybe it's the natural dynamic, and I, for example, to not accustomate with that environment, the natural environment conditions, I stay here estimating, oh my God, the sea level rise, and not so, it's more complex than that. And the communication channel, so I don't know, it's dependent also of the government and the funds to really see what is applicable for the local. And the information, the natural environment dynamic, the coastline erosion rate, the global and local sea level trends, the social conditions and vulnerabilities, the savage salinity, it's an important point of view, the sea level rise projection, the geoarchaeological sites. So in also this conjunct of diagram proposed is near. It's what it us like a human in the environment and what is the environment itself. So to finish, that's the reference that I used in the presentation are listed below. I hope you have enjoyed the presentation, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Renata. Very interesting, your presentation. We have two questions. One about what do you think about sustainable development goals, importance to Amazon researches? How do you think about?
So in terms of the goals of the sustainability development, the Amazon River is a global system that needs to be more better understood. So this agenda is an international agenda for many countries to adopt goals, especially for more better quality of life of the population. So the Marajó Island, being a poor area in Brazil, is a very interior area, what that means. So the importance is mainly to list, so I can go back here. So like the 1, 2, 3, 6, 13, 14, 15 is goals that directly means this interview on the quality of water, of the life below and on land, the climate action, and quality education. So with how many studies we have is more best for the area.
Sure. And another one, do you have the possibility to have an informal meeting with those people to friendly communicate your results and concerns? After you finish your IAG, did you return? Você voltou a conversar com as pessoas após a obtenção dos seus resultados?
No, during the research, we go in the region, we go to field work, but we're not so concerned so much in talking to people. We must collect so many soils, map so many environments. It's a very basic research. So I just take the data of population in the IBGA census and estimate about the sea level rise projections.
You use secondary data to understand the social and economics.
Yes, yes, and the intention here, it's good to future go to Surrey and with the governments. Oh, how people there, so it can approximate most better with the most affected people.
Thank you, Renata. We move to another one.
Okay, thank you, Renata. Thank you very much for your interesting work. This is a good example how geomorphology joins society and how geomorphology could be a very important tool for the improvement of the life of the people.